Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back to our channel and today's video on the execution of thought work. So I've been reminded recently in some of the workshops that I've been doing on consistency in person. It's been amazing. It's so fun to actually connect with people in real life when we do a lot of our work now online. So the good thing about these sessions is I think when you're in person, it's much more easy to speak your mind and communicate and trust the kind of safe space that you're in. So I've gotten so much good feedback and we've had so many revelations from the people in the groups about how impactful thought work can be, but some of the missing pieces for them. And funnily enough, we've had quite a few students of psychology, regardless of where or what group I've been giving the sessions to, whether it's through gyms or through universities or through business institutions or through other organizations. It's been so fun to have some people with a psychology background in the group. Yes, they understand the cognitive behavioral psychology that we use in coaching, but before the workshop, they've never really been able to see how tangible it can be and how it can be applied and implemented in your life. Psychology is often applied to people with, at least in my realms as a medical doctor, to people with mental illness. And so lots of us don't really know or have good examples as to how we can apply this behavioral psychology to our own lives, when our goal is not to work through a mental illness, but instead just to improve our performance. And this isn't a particularly new concept though. I mean, all professional athletes, for example, have coaches and a lot of them do a lot of mindset work. And I mean, there are sports psychologists as well, for example. It's very common now in the business world for people, high performers, to have coaches to help the client work towards their goal. But for us, if we're not already established as a high performer or a pro athlete, the concept of applying thought work or cognitive behavioral psychology to our own lives is quite foreign. So it was great to be able to give some examples to them as to how thought work can actually apply to them and how they can use that thought work to move them forwards just in terms of their performance or showing up in the way they want to in, for example, their relationships or for their wellness habits or whatever change they want to make in their life or whatever they want to be able to maintain in their life. And this was one of the key takeaways from the session, in particular with this last group that I was working with. So we could all relate to the example of self-sabotage that I gave in the moment, where we had this goal that we were going to show up to the gym 3 times a week, every week for 4 weeks, just for a theoretical consistency goal for us to focus our attention on and use to think about how we're thinking. So I gave this instance of how even despite all of our best intentions, the way that we think can result in sabotage when we look at the thoughts that we have that are, for a lot of us, habitually perfectionistic or just non-skillfully pessimistic, and how those types of thoughts create an emotional state that drives behaviors that are against our goal, not working with us, but working against our goal, creating more problems for us and reducing our performance. This was relatable to the whole group. And if you've ever had a goal or a part of your life where you feel like you go on the wagon and off the wagon, or something goes wrong and you can spiral, or you can just quietly or even dramatically give up on your goals, then this is probably something that you could relate to too. The revelation was, and this click moment was, when we recognized that we were just looking at one thought in this instance, one fast, harsh, premature, pessimistic, perfectionistic thought, and how that created this emotional response and then subsequently this behavioral consequence. But we also know, the psychologists tell us, they've somehow counted, that we have 50 to 60,000 thoughts per day. And all of these thoughts, whether conscious or subconscious, preconscious, these thoughts all form a part of this cognitive program that I'm talking about, this thought, emotion, behavior sequence. And you could look at that and say, well, how could I possibly be aware of each of those 50 to 60,000 thoughts to then be able to take back that agency and responsibility in my life so that I can naturally get the emotional and behavioral responses that I want? And the answer is, you can't. You cannot be aware of the 50 to 60,000 thoughts in your day. I think we only get the opportunity in our mind to be conscious every couple of seconds or so. And by that time, multiple thoughts have already passed. When people really grasp the impact of doing this thought work and how thoughts produce your emotions, which produce your behaviors, your initial inclination is that, okay, I want to be aware of every thought that I'm having at every moment, so then I can be deliberate about the thought that I choose to believe and the emotions and behaviors that then outputs. But this is not the goal of thought work. This is not the end point that we're aiming for. Instead, I want you to see and take home this understanding of the thought, emotion, behavior sequence, these cognitive programs. And by understanding that, see that in every moment, Your thoughts are an opportunity to create something different, to create different emotions and behaviors in your life. You cannot change everything at once, and we would never recommend that. But instead, what we do, especially with the coaching sessions, and what you can do with your own self-reflection in your journaling and with your own self-coaching work, is identify which thoughts are high yield for you to be mindful of during the day and pay attention to, so that you can interrupt that cognitive program and choose a different thought, input a different thought, so that you can create or output a different emotion and behavior response. You choose or you work out which thoughts are high yield to work on by what emotion and behavior outputs it creates. So to start your thought work, to start actually executing on your thought work during the day, don't just try to be aware of all of your thoughts. Start with some kind of tangible goal in mind. So what you can do here is you can look over the last day, if you want to start now, or even just look over the last hour and look at the behaviors that you took. So what this would look like if you're self-coaching is you, at the top, write a line for thought, next line emotion, next line behavior, and write down a behavior in the last hour, in the last day, that you're not particularly happy with, that wasn't to plan or that you don't like, that wasn't useful to you in terms of what you're trying to create in your life. Now, look at what emotion drove that behavior, and from that emotion, you can find what thought drove that emotion. So by filling in the cognitive program backwards or upside down from the behavior, from these outcomes that you're getting, backwards into the emotion and the thought, now you can see which thoughts are useful for you to work on, and or which emotions you find that you're reacting to, and you can look at why, and you can look at why you're not willing to feel those feelings and instead you're reacting to them, acting out of them. Now this can be quite hard to do by yourself, right? Actually having the self-awareness to recognize where that behavior came from, what emotion drove that behavior, and then going one step further and linking up which thought drove that emotion in itself. Now the next step that you would do is have a look at that thought, pull it up, understand it, reason with it, a bit of metacognition, right? Thinking about your thinking, because that thought is the place where you can most easily make the change. Most people try and make the change from their behavior line. They keep their old thoughts and just try and change their behavior. They keep thinking the gym sucks or it's too cold, and they try and just force themselves to go to the gym anyway. When instead you could change the way that you're thinking about the gym, genuinely change the way that you're thinking about the gym by reasoning, talking to your best mind, that other part of you that thinks better, that you naturally produce an emotion of motivation or desire to go to the gym, and then it's so easy to go to the gym. So that self-coaching work we can call a non-purposeful program, a program that we played from our mind down into our emotions and our behaviors that we didn't want to play, that thought, emotion, behavior, response, or cognitive program. That was non-purposeful. Now we could also say, well, in that hour, what would I have liked to have done? What behavior would I have liked to have taken? This is a purposeful program that you can deliberately play. This is how you really start to change things. So you can either work from when you went back and you found that thought in the non-purposeful program that you were playing. That thought and reasoning with that thought might lead to some more useful thoughts that you can input over here into a new purposeful program. So over here in the non-purposeful program, we've got thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. This is your cognitive program. And then so we take that new thought that we found, which is, I'm the kind of person who goes to the gym regardless. Say that thought makes the emotion of powerful. And then that emotion of powerful makes it easy for you to get up and go to the gym. Prioritize, plan, and physically show up. That's one way that you can quite naturally create change from a behavior that you don't like over here, from a non-purposeful behavior to over here, a purposeful behavior, a behavior that you wanted to create in your life. Now, the other thing you can do for the purposeful program is much in the same way. You can start down here at the behavior line, say, what do I want to do? I want to show up to the gym. I want to be able to be mentally sharp, prioritizing and planning well. I want to physically get up, put my clothes on even though it's cold, find my shoes, rush around and get my drink bottle. So what emotions then, if they're the behaviors that I want to create, working your way back up and saying, well, what emotion would make that easy? What emotion would make those behaviors just a slam dunk, destined to happen, no friction? And here's where you might find emotions like powerful or a desire, motivation. They would obviously make those behaviors a slam dunk, easy to happen. Those kinds of emotions give you this like buzzing up and outwards energy. They give you energy. Emotions absolutely give you energy. If tomorrow was Saturday and you thought you had the day off and I told you now you got to go to work tomorrow, you would probably have a slump in your energy just from having that new thought in your mind. Or if I told you right now, sitting here where you are, so you're feeling flat, you just won the lottery, $1 million. How much is the lottery now? Millions of dollars is yours. You'll probably suddenly get this wave of energy. It's just your emotions, right? Nothing else is physically changing in your environment. Your emotions can give you energy. So now I've got the emotion established that would help drive these behaviors with ease. And now we go back up to the thought line and we find a thought, a personal thought for ourselves that creates that emotion for us. This is how you can do your thought work. You can literally just start looking back at the last hour of time. What behaviors or outcomes am I unhappy with? And what else? What would I like to be different? Make a non-purposeful cognitive program, thought, emotion, behavior. And in contrast, make a purposeful program, thought, emotion, behavior. Then every time you have that thought, emotion, behavior in the non-purposeful program, you've now tagged that in your mind. It's your work. The execution is noting when any of these thought, emotion, behaviors in this cognitive program are happening and catching yourself, checking in with yourself, interrupting that program, and executing on these elements in your purposeful program, purposely directing your mind to that thought, feeling that emotion, and executing on those behaviors. This is the work of thought work. It doesn't just happen in the coaching session. Magic happens, revelations happen, insight is created in the coaching session, but the actual work, the execution happens in the week space between the sessions. You go out and you execute, and you can start doing this at home right now yourself. I love you guys so much. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in my next one.